So, welcome back to Max Easy Lessons, Breath, Eyes, Memory. Yeah, and we are looking at the themes today. This one is going to be a little bit longer, so please take your earphones out, stick them in your ear. Let's do this. It's going to take some time, so let's do this. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for stopping in. Hit the subscribe button, put your bells on. You'll get more notifications on what is coming next. If you are returning, please double check, make sure that your bell notification is on so you will see what is coming is next. Oh, thank you so much for coming in, people. Let's do this. Themes in Breath, Eyes, Memory. First up on the themes is migration. All right, now migration is a common thing in the West Indies. It has been a common thing in the West Indies, where people leave from the West Indies to go to first world countries in order to improve their education, get economic gains, or just to make a better life for themselves. Most of us who are reading Breath, Eyes, Memory will be familiar with migration and the results of migration. And these are important to understanding what happens in this novel. So draw on your knowledge of migration in the West Indies. As some of you may have parents who do live overseas trying to make a better life for you. So you will kind of understand what Sophie is going through, right? We are familiar with the letters from away, the occasional packages, the money sent, the remittance money that comes for the kids to buy school clothes, buy whatever it is they need, laptops, phones, you name it, all of these come. Paying for houses, whatever it is, right? Dantica shows this to us, and it is no surprise either because we are accustomed to this kind of thing. There is also that pain in the separation, right? As families are broken apart and they are reunited after time, and this leaves the children with a lot of issues trying to deal with the fact that they are not accustomed to the parent who has not been living with them. And so we see, and it is no surprise really, that Sophie becomes attached to Tanti Ati, her aunt, who she has been living with for how long. And when she sees Martine, she could not respond or relate to Martine because migration does this to people. Danticus lets us know of the results that immigrants have to deal with and the degrading jobs that they have to take in order to survive in a new country. The longingness for home. The people who have left, their longingness to return home. And this is clear also in the way they share Haitian foods. For most people who have migrated from the Caribbean, the push factor remains economic, right? But for the Haitians, it is even more compelling because they must escape the political challenges that existed in the country at the time, the unjustness under which people had to live, and the killing of Dessalines by the Macoutes brings across this point that the political challenges in Haiti at the time, they were serious, and they would have forced people to leave the country because the riots had become even more intense. Now, let's go into the language. Sophie becomes alienated. She felt like an outsider in New York, basically. So she was alienated. And she could not speak their language, and they could not speak her language. And so there were barriers which resulted from the language. Joseph, of course, she leans towards Joseph because Joseph knows her language. And even though Sophie learns to speak the new language, you are going to find that for her, she has lost so much. She now has to lose her language, her native language, which would have been a part of her culture. She has lost her family as she would have known it. And let's put family in quotation marks there because she saw Tanti Ati as the closest thing to family. She's now with Martine. Life is different and she has to adjust to the different way of life. She is drawn definitely though to Joseph because he speaks the patois. Right? He is an African American, yes, but he also speaks the language that would connect her. And the fact that you're in a strange country, the first person who you see who speaks your language or who has some reminder of your country and your culture, that's the first person you are likely to lean towards, right? Yes, so Sophie's case with Joseph isn't surprising to an extent. Danticot now brings across that the language of the Haitian people, it is unique. And of course, it is just as important as any other language across the world. Now, let's move on to female sexuality and testing. Danticot brings the reader's attention to the different types of inequalities that existed between male and female. Now, the society, like the typical Caribbean West Indian society, right? Men has more prevalence or had in the past Men were more of the dominant sex, and so it was easy for men to do quite a number of things, and people would have been lenient with them. Now, a woman's inferior role is placed on her from she was born. She is trained from an early age to become married so that she can take care of a family. No, if she's going to become married, she has to remain pure. She has to remain a virgin. Now, a woman basically is just a commodity. She becomes marketable if she is pure, if she's still a virgin. Now, here is where the challenge is. Grandmother Ivy points out to Sophie a light glowing across the valley. And she points out that this represents the lantern, because that's how kids were welcomed into the world. Now, if a boy baby is born, the lantern stays all night, and this is a means of celebration. But if it's a girl, there will be no lamps, no candles, and no more light. Women, according to Grandmother Ivy, must have 10 fingers. No, sorry, that was Tanti Ati. She says that women must have 10 fingers. There is boiling, loving, mothering, nursing, baking, healing, frying, ironing, washing, scrubbing. Now, all of these are roles that women would have played in the household, right? So, Tanti Ati makes sure that she tells this to Sophie from an early age, and that a girl must protect her virginity because this is what is her most valuable asset. Now, some of us may not agree that this is a woman's most valuable asset, but back then in Haiti, it was. And a girl had to be careful and guard it. The mothers and the grandmothers then become abusers because at the end of the day, Haitian girls after puberty are being subjected to what they call testing. And testing is a weekly ordeal that allows the grandmother or the mother to insert her little finger into the girl's vagina to check whether the hymen is still intact. On the wedding night, now this is where it gets funny. And I mean, honestly, people, this is where it really does get funny. On the night of the wedding, the husband has to be able to hang that sheet outside of his window with the blood stains on it to show that, all right, he has taken her virginity. Now, that in itself would have been embarrassing to any woman who gets married to a man. Because if the blood is not there, then the man looks like an idiot and the woman is treated as less of a good person. Let's say good person, because then it would mean that she was not a virgin. And so the whole idea, of course, it sounds archaic in many ways because that was a thing of the past. But guess what? Truth is that the girl's virginity was her greatest asset back in those days. Sorry. Now, the man would triumph or he would be humiliated. And that was up to whatever happened on the night of the wedding. The practice of testing, though, had many serious psychological effects. Attie hated and dreaded the invasive examinations. She didn't want to do that. And Sophie is unable to enjoy a sexual relationship with her husband because of how she has been traumatized as a teenager going through that procedure with her mother, Martine. Sophie's mother, Martine, also suffered a sexual abuse not only from her mother's testing, but also when she was brutally raped by one of the Tonton Macoutes when she was a teenager. She suffers a mental breakdown, and we realize that even towards the end where she commits suicide, that she had never truly recovered from that mental breakdown. Now, can we move on to the oppression of women? Or do I need to pause a bit? All right, let me pause a little bit. Soak in what was said. All right, so let's go to the oppression of women. Danticat focuses on Haiti, but she also makes the point that violence against women is a problem across the world. It wasn't just unique to Haiti, right? But she writes about what happened in Haiti, and she also writes about what happens across the world. Now, Haiti, women suffer at the hands of men and women. But that was not only in Haiti. There are Ethiopian women who Sophie meets, Buki, whose grandmother subjected her to a painful cultural practice of cutting off her clitoris and sewing up her labia in order to ensure that she remained a virgin until marriage. There is also Davina, whose grandfather raped her over a period of 10 years. Now, sadly, women have really and truly faced some of the most serious issues in history. The other one is doubling and insanity. Boki, Martine, Sophie, Attie, and Davina, these people are all emotionally damaged. Attie is Monsieur Augustine. Well, he leaves Attie at the altar. Um, Attie is also abandoned by Sophie. She becomes depressed, severely depressed, and she turns to alcohol. Sophie has bulimia, and bulimia is where a woman will gorge on food. She will eat a lot of food and force herself to carry up all of this food because she watches her weight. Sophie also has the challenge of of enjoying sexual intercourse. Martine, actually, she goes mentally unstable, into full blown insanity, and later into suicide. So these women have been troubled women based on the past and how society treats these women. Danticat also links these mental issues with the way that women are treated in the society and the whole idea of violence against women. This is what happens when there is violence against women. Now, doubling. Doubling is a practice in the voodoo tradition. And this is what Danticat wants to tell us. Now, people can split themselves in two. That was the only way they could murder, rape, do whatever evil they want with people, and at the same time, they were able to enjoy a peaceful life at home. That is doubling. Some of us may do that. We are put in situations and we function normally and naturally. And then when we leave, we realize that here we are a totally different person, right? So women who were the subjects of testing, of rape, or any other sexual abuse would have resorted to doubling in many ways, because what would happen is that they knew that in their future relationship or their present relationship, whatever had happened in the past had to stay in the past, and so they had to engage in sexual encounters with their partners, but they would just lie there and their minds would not have been on what was happening. All right, are you following me here? Then we go to rebellion or submission. Historically, Haitians trace their ancestry and cultural heritage back to Africa. No doubt about that. Haitians will trace much of their history to the history of Africa. There is the culture of the French colonizer, though, who had also come to Haiti and who had made an impact on the country. The Virgin Mary would have been from the French colonizers' ideals on religion, and she was perhaps presented as the ideal for womanhood. And then there is Urzulu, who is her African counterpart, and who could be seen as the goddess of love. Urzula is the only goddess of love doubled up as the Virgin Mother. The word doubled then suggests that both the Virgin image and the Urzuli image could coexist in each woman, but that the fact is that one of them would be more dominant. So it's either she was going to be the ideals of womanhood, or she would have been the ideal of beauty or love. Danticat gives us a great significance to the choice of women woman needs to make between these two role models. She realizes that the suffering face of Mary, which is what society seems to require of every woman, or becoming the strong, fearless Ursula, would have been a contrast. And so it was either way that women had to choose to be in the society. Either you were strong or you were weak. You were docile and you accepted the standards of the society. When Sophie defiantly dresses her mother's dead body in red, now this was a cause for concern, because here we see that Sophie claims for her the freedom to escape her life of meekness. She didn't want to be suffering or be submissive anymore, and she here claims her freedom by dressing her mother in red. She goes against all the traditions, all the cultural beliefs and practices of how someone should be buried, and she sends a statement that women could be free from the conventions of the society. Sadly, though, for Martin, that freedom came only with death. Now, the other theme is that of death. Yes, of course, you can always talk about the treatment of women in the society. Well, if you were to talk about the treatment of women in society, female sexuality and testing would come under there. The oppression of women would also come under that theme as well. But let's do death. You have perhaps been surprised at what seems to be a preoccupation with death in this novel. Grandmother Ivy she spends all of her life mourning. And she's mourning the death of her husband all of her life. And she is also making careful plans for her own funeral. Martine, she wanted to be buried in Haiti, so of course, when she dies, Sophie takes her mother home for the funeral. And yes, death now is the way out, the final release from the anguish of living, and as such, Sophie has no doubts and qualms about burying her mother in red. We hear bells ringing for funerals, and we visit the cemetery where Tante Attie names all of the ancestors with respect. Both Joseph's parents had died, and Sophie learns on her return to Haiti that Mangrace has also died. For many people who read the novel, they will see that death is almost a release into freedom, because in death, people become free, right? Now, in life, you are on your journey, and to die is to embark on the journey to be hopefully reunited with loved ones who have passed on before. Haitian folklore stands that when a star falls, someone will die, and that when people die, they can at least return to their ancestors in Guinea. For this reason, we realize that the body is placed in the ground, and therefore it is expected that the spirit would be traveling then. And finally, mother-daughter relationship or mother-daughter bond. Danticus focuses on the pain that mothers inflict on their daughters. But there is also some amount of healing to be found in this community of women. These women believe that they're acting in their daughter's best interest by carrying on the culture, of course. And so they would basically test the girls surrounding much of the teenage years with shame and humiliation. I'm not sure to what efforts they thought this would have worked, but at the same time, yes, it was a part of their culture. And as individuals reading the novel, if we are not Haitians, we still have to respect that this is a part of the culture that Danticus brings across. How women were treated throughout their lives. It wasn't just as adults, but how women have been treated throughout their lives. The bond between mother and daughter is broken in many ways because of the migration, because of the rape, because of so many challenges that had come with being a woman in the Caribbean. Generations of women, yes, have been damaged for life through the practices of testing and the indoctrination that they were to be submissive in their future in their future relationships. Nevertheless, in many cases, there is a strong bond that exists between the mother and daughter, which can bring healing and strength. Now, in the novel, we realize that it celebrates the power that stands in a community of women, how women can fix a situation, how women can rebond with each other to bring about changes that will have positive effects on the world. The presence of little Bridget is a glimpse of the future, where women have learned that a woman's body is basically her own. It is basically her own, because Sophie says, it was up to me. And because it was up to her, she knew that she would not allow her daughter to suffer through the same embarrassment of testing or of much of the Haitian culture. Perhaps this was the influence of being in America. Perhaps this was just the influence of the times changing. Whichever way it was, Danticus wants us to see that there is hope in the future for Haiti and that things too can change for women as a whole. Thank you so very much for sticking around. I know this was a lengthy one, right? But guess what? Thank you so much for stopping by. Please do come again. Hit the red button below. There is much more coming for your CSEC examination. Much more help is coming your way. You have to also take into consideration what your teacher has taught you. This may be a different perspective, but guess what? The moment you tackle a question, use the information from the book, and this is actually information from the book. Use it to your best advantage, students, and guess what? Do your best on the examinations. Thank you again.